Hello everybody, I'm Ömer Madra from Açık Radio, and I'm very happy to be among you after all those years. I was a student in these long time ago here. So it's the first time that I'm supposed to do a moderating thing. I don't know how it is done, but I've spent some time working on it, so I hope it'll come out all right. And you know these very famous people. I want to reintroduce them to you. So we'll have a short video of the achievements of both the Yes Men and the Zaytung, and then we'll start our discussion after that. Exactly according to the false New York Times print, I have prepared some headlines, real headlines from today's and maybe yesterday's paper. So I would like to start with you, Mike, and how would you, what kind of a paper would you prepare with these headlines? And I'm now going to read them over to you.
Should I wear these, or do a translation as well? Should I wear this, or are you going to do a translation?
Yeah, I'm going to read it in English.
Okay.
Okay. The first one is, Kerry makes it clear. Obama wants authority to deploy ground troops in Iraq and Syria. Secretary of State confirms proposed AUMF, that means authorization for the use of military force, would allow for boots on the ground in fight against the Islamic State, that is terror. Common Dreams organization, that I take from the Common Dreams, rebooting. The second one is Iraq's army has shot down 2 British planes as they were carrying weapons for the ISIL terrorists in Al Anbar province, a senior lawmaker disclosed on Monday. Fars news agency. The Iraqi Parliament's National Security and Defense Committee has access to the photos of both planes that are British and have crashed while they were carrying weapons for the ISIL, or Islamic State. Head of the committee, Hakem al-Zamali, said, according to a Monday report of the Arabic Language Information Center of the Islamic Supreme Council of Iraq. So that's coalition forces' latest operations in the war on terror. Thirdly, Netanyahu admits sabotage on Iran talks, his primary mission. It is my obligation, says Israeli Prime Minister, to do everything that I can to prevent this agreement. Numerous doubts have been cast on Netanyahu's claims about Iran's nuclear program, including by Israel's own spy agency, Mossad, as leaked documents revealed earlier this week. That's also from Common Dreams, or secret parallel state at work within the state of Israel. And then lastly, Snowden document reveals huge scope of Canada's domestic surveillance. The documents shine a light for the first time on the huge scope of the operation, exposing the controversial details the government withheld from the public. CBS News and Intercept. And the reasoning to protect government computers, both with taxpayer money. Please.
Okay, so yes, yes. Okay, so what am I supposed to do? This is a tricky project. Okay, I mean, the first step here is to invent a time machine and maybe go back to 1950 or so. Can we do that? Is anybody here working engineering, right? Some of you? work on that time machine. We could go back to 2001 and address these headlines as well, but I think maybe 1950, 46 would be better. Or maybe a little earlier, I don't know. So, I mean, what we did with the New York Times here was we created a newspaper that was filled with dreams, with visions. I mean, I wouldn't even call them utopian. I would just call them optimistic ideas about an alternative future. And I mean, I think for each of these stories, you can always think of what you'd like to see happening instead of what's happening here. And instead of granting permission for boots on the ground, what would we rather see happen that could address the root problems that are fueling ISIL right now? And the fact is, I don't know. I'm not an expert in this, but somebody in the room knows a hell of a lot more than I do and could write that story with the help of some other people, including activists who have been working in that issue. And that's what we did for the New York Times. We put the word out to a lot of different authors who contributed. And each of the articles that we created for that magazine had authors who were well informed on that issue and had a series of steps that they thought would, you know, logically address the problem, but address the root causes instead of just treating the symptoms. Like, obviously, you know, dropping more bombs in a very bombed place doesn't solve the problem of bombing or solve the violent problem, the violence problem. So, yeah, bombs as an answer to beheading does not necessarily work, right? It doesn't solve or end the beheading problem. So, yeah, there's a process that we'd follow. I don't know the alternate headlines here, but it's easy for everybody in the room together to come up with what the headlines would be. And I think that for us, that method of sort of, it's not really satire, it's something else. But the positive announcement, we have done a lot of like straight up satirical actions that we're indulging in sort of black comedy, you know, the dark humor in the tradition of Jonathan Swift, in the, you know, this 18th century author in Britain who announced that the Irish should solve the hunger problem by eating their own babies, you know, and this was a response to the government starving the Irish by still allowing food to be exported, even though because it fetched a higher price. So they're keeping people from eating the wheat, even though the potatoes were failing. So it's political commentary, and we've done things like that, but you know, increasingly, we're also doing this other thing, which you see in the Dow announcement, where we announce what we see as, we use a position of power and authority to announce an alternate path, or to show that another world is possible. So yeah, that's maybe what would be fun here, is to break into groups and have everybody write the headlines, and then we publish a newspaper tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you. So I've got another set of headlines, real headlines for Zaytung'un.
Your mic's off.
I've got another set of headlines, real headlines for Hakan from Zaytung'un.
Before you start, maybe I want to say something. What's interesting in this video?
Your microphone, press that button that says power. Down, it's a, yeah.
Guy knows. Yeah. I think what's interesting about this video, especially that New York Times work that you've done, is, okay, you print much more an optimistic version of the real New York Times, and the reaction of the people. Nobody believes it. Most of them find it impossible, interesting, or funny, or an absurd. I think it's interesting in a way that's exposing how people are ready to accept, how people accept that pessimistic versions. They've got it more inner. So when there's something, when there happens something like that health insurance thing or some stuff like that, people find it it's not possible. I think it's important the way of exposing. As I said, people really get used to very fast, very quickly to the standards of the government or to the standards to the politics of the government. I mean, like when someone says, or when the government says, okay, no health insurance, everyone will pay for the healthcare itself. Okay, maybe one day or 2 days they'll protest or they'll get angry about it, but the third day, okay, that's the normal thing. When the government says, okay, you're not going to pass that street anymore, or you're not going to drive cars anymore, people just get angry about it for a couple days, then next week everyone takes it as a normal. Nobody remembers they used to drive one a week ago. So it's important, I think, the way people accept such politics.
Yeah. It is, and I think that's why, for some reason, it still ends up being funny, which is weird. It's not satire, but it is still, because
they are not fantastic things you printed. They can easily be done, maybe, or maybe they are already being done in other parts of the world.
Exactly, there are blueprints that show that they work.
Yeah,
I mean, something like national health care, it not only can be done, it's been done in dozens and dozens of places, and there are many different models for how to do it that work and work way more efficiently than the crazy version we have in the U.S. But it's that, it's partially, it is this mindset. It's being really deadened to the possibility. So, it becomes funny.
Yeah, and if I may add something, I think there's a word for that too. I mean, the term, it's called manufacturing consent. There have been over so many years, they have been exposed to this kind of thing by the media, by the obedient media, so they can't believe it happening. I mean, that's to my mind.
I mean, how does how does Zaytung function in that regard too? Because I think when you see something and it's that funny, when people laugh at those headlines or those stories, do you feel it works in a similar way? Do people see other possibilities? How does it, or is it a way for everybody to laugh together?
I don't really have much idea about it. I don't really know what are people laughing at Zaytung, if I have to say the truth. But there are different models. There are different paths we follow. One is taking the absurdity, taking the real absurdity to one step higher level. The other is just exposing the absurdity of what doesn't look like absurdity. So I don't know, people. What are people laughing at? But in some ways, I hear it from many readers and people I meet. It's got a relieving effect on the people. Just maybe making them think that, okay, I'm not alone to find this thing stupid, or find this thing absurd, or think there's something wrong going on with this country. So I think people much more like that feeling of, oh, okay, I'm not alone. That's, I think, the most important thing about what Zaytung is doing here.
That sounds very similar to what I've heard people describe about humor as a form of resistance in Poland during the Solidarity movement, or in Russia opposing the Soviet state. So there's a history.
The samizdat, yeah.
Yeah, this becomes
the underground papers, new, reviews, yeah.
Yeah.
Magazines.
Yeah, it sounds. I hear a lot of similar, resonating.
The feeling of solidarity, I think, maybe.
Yeah, and alterity, and also solidarity, or knowing that there are other people out there reading this and also laughing, right? Yeah. Especially when the state policies are pushing people underground, pushing for less visibility. You know, if resistance becomes less and less visible, how do you know that other people are resisting? If you don't see them on the streets, if you don't, you know, and in a way, having these sort of shared networks of criticality, that whether it exists or is still allowed to exist because it's funny or not, it still helps to establish that it's there, right?
Yeah,
true.
Maybe it's the inner voice of the society. When the other voice is suppressed, it's the deeper thoughts of the society. The humor becomes the form of, I think, deeper voice of the society, which cannot be said loudly, but what everyone knows, but they cannot say it loudly. The humor or the satire makes the form of saying it into each other, I think. So the more suppression is powerful, the more satire is powerful. So I think we're lucky.
Yeah, but I beg to differ in this respect. I think the normal newspapers, the dailies, and the TV channels are also becoming most funny, and they don't unintentionally so. So I mean, I had these headlines. I gathered it for you especially today, just to show that the normal the papers that are printing them every day is of such absurdity that you have to laugh, or either you lose your balls. I mean, so may I go on with this?
Yeah.
The first of all, today's headlines from Taraf newspaper. 3 inspectors from the Capital Markets Board, SPK, Sermaye Piyasası Kurulu, board or attend to the daily routine editorial board meeting of the dissident Turkish daily Taraf and make media history. And that's true, real. The SPK people arrive early in the morning at 8:30 sometimes, and they take part in the editorial meeting for a while and then take a lunch break. Now, this certainly sounds like a chapter from Nikolay Gogol's The General Inspector, don't you think so? I mean, işte AKP'nin yeni Türkiye'si, dünyanın en özgür basını bizde diyen AKP iktidarı, tarafın yazı işleri toplantısına SPK müfettişleriyle katılarak ileri demokrasi tarihine geçti. Tabii ufak da bir hinlik yapmışlar, adamlar bir yerde oturuyorlar, they just made a small ruse, the newspaper guys, of course. I mean, they just didn't tell the officials that they were holding the routine, the editorial board right at that moment. So at one point of time, they had to leave it. But it's still, it is probably one of the first meetings made with the inspectors of a newspaper.
Yeah, what would be funny about it that these inspectors will be sued for this headline because they were in an editorial meeting and they're responsible for the headline. And then next day another prosecutor maybe would sue these guys for to make this headline and for insulting government or something like that. That would be funny.
They should ask the guy for the headline today, maybe. The second one is from Zaman this time, newspaper Zaman. President Erdogan of Turkey in a public speech overtly implies that the president of the Fed, the central bank of Turkey, is secretly taking orders from unnamed foreign powers. Just a crude translation I tried to make. You defend your independence to our face. This is the royal we. Yet you are dependent on some venues. Tell that to us. So it's a sort of a secret parallel state at work within the state of Turkey in a way. I mean, başka bir yerlere bağlılığın mı var diye soruyor. Yani bize karşı bağımsızlığı savunuyorsun da başka yerlere mi bağımlılığın var? Bir de bunu söyle. That's the second one. I mean, would you like to comment on it right away or?
It doesn't even make sense, the word you defend your independence to our face, yet are you dependent on some venue? Tell that to us. So yeah, you're independent to us. That means you are dependent to someone. That's not even logical. I mean, we had made a headline, I think, a week or 2 weeks ago about the central bank thing, the arguments between Erdogan and central bank, and we made the head of central bank, Egemen Başçı, say, Erdem Başçı, sorry, Erdem Başçı say that, okay, we're not going to talk about economics anymore, so we're going to give weather reports, and so that's not our topic anymore. Economics is not our topic anymore, because every time we say or do something, we are blamed for it, and that affects the economy badly. So it's better not to talk about economics totally. So I think they're coming to a point like that. I wouldn't be surprised if central bank would comment on anything like, I don't know, maybe football games or anything about the economics. They would be more logical and more, I think, good for any of us.
Yeah. So, and here's a good one too, you know, I brought it with myself. The Public Health Association of Turkey, or what's called Türkiye Halk Sağlığı Kurumu, starts an inquiry, probe against a member physician with the plea to expel him for making offensive comments about the President Erdogan by simply sharing his portrait together with the Gollum character from the film Lord of the Rings. The board of inspectors, furthermore, attach a bio of Gollum to the file. You know, and that's true. And in the bio it says, well, Gollum is an old hobbit. One time in the Gladden Plains, he was born and by the name of Smeagol. And this goes on like that. And this is real news that I have taken from the news Daily Evrensel. Any comments?
Yeah, I had heard about it. Yeah, I read about it. I think that Gollum explanation is made for the Erdogan himself. So, okay, you are being insulted, but you probably don't know what Gollum is. So you're being insulted this way. He was an ex-hobbit. So, what is hobbit? Okay, that's short, hairy people.
Short.
Okay,
that's not acceptable.
They call you short. Once short, maybe. Because I think being golden is not that bad, but being short may be insulting.
And well, since Mike has talked about, I have got another modest proposal for Zeitung. We could discuss it later on after this meeting. Mm-hmm. But I have brought with me a full text translation of the 1215 edition of the Magna Carta. You know, just 800 years ago. In 2 months' time, it will be the 800th anniversary. So maybe we could arrange together with the Zeitung and Açık Radio, we can make a headline, for example, after the elections, the president declares
the Magna Carta?
Yeah, for the first time in Turkey, everything is forgiven. And here's what they say in Article 39. No free man shall be seized or imprisoned or stripped of his rights or possessions, or outlawed or exiled, or deprived of his standing in any way, nor will we proceed with force against him, or send others to do so. The king is talking, King John. Except by the lawful judgment of his equals, or by the law of the land. And Article 40, no one will we sell, to no one deny or delay right of justice. How's that for a headline?
Yeah, that suits me. Okay. So are we going to ask for 400 seats? We're going to ask for 400 seats.
No, this is after the election, when he's elected the great president, you know.
Okay,
then he with a single, the balcony speech, and at the end it will be finished like this, for example. We will not seek to procure from anyone, either by our own efforts or those of a third party, anything by which any part of these concessions or liberties might be revoked or diminished. Should such a thing be procured, it shall be null and void, and we will at no time make use of it, either ourselves, he's talking about himself, the king, or through a third party. Wouldn't it be lovely if Erdogan should proclaim, after just 800 years of delay, promulgating this?
I wouldn't be surprised if he made a similar talk after the election, but I wouldn't be surprised either if none of these happen after the speech. If everything goes in a more authoritarian way after the speech, I wouldn't be surprised either. Probably, if that will be an election victory for him, he'll make a similar speech about the freedom, about we love everyone in this relation, blah blah blah, and probably the next day nothing will be different from the past. So okay, let him go and do it. Yeah.
But just like in the
no, it's on.
Just like they did in the New York Times false edition, we will declare it. It's promulgated as part of the Constitution. That's our trick.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we proceed onwards? Shall we go on with the questions and answers from the crowd? Please.
Someone all the way back. Oh.
Ben Zaytung için bir soru soracağım. Ciddi gazeteler bile şu kadar absürt olmuşken ben yarı bir ciddi bir soru sorayım. Siz Zaytung'un işlerinin kötüye gitmesini düşünüyor musunuz? Yani herkes Zaytung gibi haber yapıyor ya da bu bir Zaytung haberi değil diye haber yapıyor. Bunun hakkında ne düşünüyorsunuz?
Türkçe mi yanıtlayayım? Tamam. Ya o açıkçası o sınavdan çok fazla geçtiğimiz için şu ana kadar, yani son geride kalan 5 sene içerisinde her defasında işler daha absürt ve saçma oldukça bizim işimize geldiğini fark ettik. O yüzden ne oluyor tam olarak bilmiyorum. Hani insanlar galiba bir de şey diye mi, acaba lan bunun üzerine çıkabilecekler mi merakıyla mı şey yapıyorlar. O da bizi de biraz kamçılıyor aslında. Dur bakayım bunun üzerine ne koyabiliriz şeyle. Birazcık böyle hani hakikaten şey doğru, yani rekabet başarıyı getirir diyorlar ya. Doğru ya, gerçekten doğru. Yani işin hani gerçek medya tarafında ya da gerçek politika tarafında işler absürtleştikçe bizim için de işler iyi gidiyor. Hani ziyaretçi sayımız artıyor falan filan, öyle hani şeyler. Onun ekmeğini yiyoruz. O yüzden işin o kısmından çok şikayetçi olduğumuzu söyleyemem yani. Oldu mu yani?
Başka? Buyurun.
Ben de Zaytung için soracağım. Hiç şey yapmayı denediniz mi böyle, mesela harfi harfine gerçek bir haberi koyup ondan sonra insanlar onu tıkladıktan sonra hani bu aslında gerçek haberdi dediğiniz oldu mu? Çünkü muhtemelen insanlar şaka sanabilir.
Ya
yani.
onu şeyde yapıyoruz mesela. Bazen hani bunun üzerine de koyacak bir şey yok dediğimiz haberler için ayrı bir bölüm açtık zaten, Halkın Sesi diye. Sitede öyle bir bölüm var. Gerçekten orada bir işte haberi veriyoruz ve onun altına insanların yorumlarını, sadece 3 tane tip var böyle standart değişmeyen. Onların yorumlarını ekliyoruz. Yani ihtiyaçtan öyle bir bölümümüz de var zaten. Aslında zaman zaman da hani yaptığımız şey gerçek bir haberi orada alıp birazcık daha komik bir başlıkla vermek oluyor. Hani yani mesela en son işte şu ilk aklıma gelen örnek olarak söylüyorum da burada da gösterdik. Şu Fuat Avni haberi var. Hani bir yıllıktır süren Fuat Avni'nin kimliğini deşifre etme çalışmalarında erkek sen delikanlıysan çık ortaya aşamasına gelmiş. Ama olan da o zaten. Hani sadece biz bunu alıp açık bir başlık şeklinde veriyoruz hani bazen. Yani hiç gerçek bir haber yapmıyor, onu da yapıyoruz aslında. En çok da yapmayı sevdiğim şey o aslında. Hani ben editör ekibi içerisinde işler tercih bana kaldığında biraz daha olaya tepeden bakıp aslında ne olduğunu anlatan bir başlık bulmayı, başlık atmayı, olayın ne kadar saçma ve absürt olduğunu direkt ifade eden bir başlık atmayı, en çok sevdiğim iş onlar benim yani şeyde. Bir adım daha absürtleştirmektense mevcut absürtlüğü böyle hani açıkça ifade etmek bence daha zevkli ve eğlenceli kısmı işin yani.
Zaten de imkansız da olabilecek gibi durumlar var işte, mesela şey örneğinde verdiğin gibi, yani bu Fuat Avni'de olduğu gibi artık daha absürt bir noktaya zaten istense de taşınması
evet, hani
imkansız.
En fazla hani ya şöyle bir şey var hani ben hani kuşak olarak işte 78'liyim mesela doğum olarak. İşte 90'larda falan hani işte politik ya o zaman hani politikaya kafamız çalışacak kadar en azından lisedeydik. Aşağı yukarı biliyorduk işte liderler vardı. Kim işte Tansu Çiller, Süleyman Demirel bilmem kim falan filan. baktığın zaman hani okey onlar da saçmalardı bilmem neydi hani kötü bir şeyler olurdu sürekli ülkede falan filan da biraz da belki hani biz o zaman daha çocuk olduğumuzdan da onun da etkisi olabilir. Okey onu da kabul ediyorum ama işler biraz daha önemli ve ciddi bir havada yürürdü. Hani bütün o saçmalıklar bile bir devlet ciddiyeti bir efendim en sevmediğin adam bile hani diyelim ki ne bileyim hani atıyorum işte Necmettin Erbakan diyelim o zaman hani politik görüş olarak en böyle karşısında olduğun adamdır diyelim hani politik sahnede. Tamam bu adam da kafası çalışıyor yani ondan şüphe etmezdi. Bu adam da işte bir şey var mı bir anormallik var mı diye şüphe etmezsin mesela hani ya da işte bununla karşı karşıya gelsem yani haklı bile olsam ağzı öyle bir laf yapar ki o yani o kadar iyi bir akıllı eğitimli bilmem ne adam orada beni dümdüz eder hani ne kadar haklı da olsam o yüzden karşısına çıkıp da iki kelime söylemeye cesaret edemezsin mesela yani o üniversiteli ya da liseli halinde. Halbuki şimdi durum biraz şöyle bunlar ciddi mi ya da işte yani düşünün hani bir işte ülkenin en tepesindeki insan hayali bir Twitter karakterine erkek sen çık ortaya da bu olmaz tamam mı hani olmaması gereken bir şey yani gerçek bir dünyada hani karşısına çıkıp da böyle hani işin abi nasıl olması gerektiğini anlatma şeyinden de ancak ya üşendiğin için falan vazgeçersin hani ya aman kim uğraşacak şu vakitten sonra gibi bir motivasyonu birazcık işlerin doğru ya da yanlış ya da işte hani bu söylediğim bir otorite hayranlığı ya da şeyi olarak da algılamayın ama o devlet ciddiyetinden ve devlet ağırlığından uzaklaşmasının da şeyi var bizim için bir şaşırtıcı bizim gibi birazcık daha eski kuşaklar için diyelim hani sizden öyle bir etkisi de var ya o yüzden biz belki biraz daha fazla şaşırıyor olabilir bu politik çevre içine doğmadığımız için yani. Buyurun.
Siz dediniz biz çoğu zaman hani zaten farklı bir şekilde yansıtıyoruz ama aslında gerçek aslında tamamen doğru olaylar. Mesela videoda da gösterilen haberde Türkiye 2875 kilometrelik en uzun korku tüneli haberinde orada sadece aslında farklı bir yorum değişikliği vardı. Yoksa hani anlatılan ana temalar hani Turizm Bakanı işte kar topu almaya çıkarken öldüğü için bunların hepsi doğru aslında. Yani bunların hepsi tamamen doğru. Sadece bunu hani aslında şöyle olsaydı komik olurdu gibi bir şekilde.
Ya evet.
Çünkü o kadar abartılamayacak gibi ki yani sadece yorum farkıyla insanlara komik göstererek biraz da bilinçlendirme çabası gibi.
Yani o çok olur, iddialı bir laf olur bilinçlendirme çabası diyelim de hani ona çok dikkat ediyoruz zaten. Özellikle bir politika ile ilgili bir haber yapacağımız zaman boşa düşmemeniz için çünkü gerçek olmayan bir şeyle dalga geçerseniz siz kendiniz komik duruma düşersiniz. Hani ayaklarının yere sağlam basması, gerçek verilere dayanması, gerçek bir bilgi üzerinden o haberin inşa edilmesi için ona çaba gösteriyoruz. İşte haberi doğrulatmaya çalışıyoruz. Emin değilsek onun üzerine gitmiyoruz mesela. Hani işte bakanın bir tanesi bir şey söylemiş. Gerçekten onu söyledi mi? Ya da onu hangi kontekst içinde söyledi o adam? Bütün bunları aslında birazcık daha titiz bir şekilde araştırıp ondan sonra eğer doğruluğundan eminsek o bilginin üzerine gidiyoruz. Yani o bizim de yaptığımız için aslında hani ayaklarının yere basması için gerekli olan bir şey. Gerçek üzerine inşa edilmesi gerekiyor yani.
Buyurun.
Yaklaşık bir ay önce Zaytung'tan 40 tane yazar ayrıldı ve Resmi Gazete isimli bir oluşum kurdular. Bugün Radikal bunu köşesine taşımış. O ayrılan 40 kişi şöyle bir şey diyor. Zaytung kurulduğunda ki ilkelere bağlı kalmadığı için biz ayrıldık diye bir açıklama yapmışlar. İşte buna en iyi cevap verebilecek siz olduğunuz için cidden böyle mi? Yani Zaytung ilkelerine bağlı mı yoksa...
Mahkemede hesaplaşacağız diyor. Ya yok tabii öyle bir şey. Ya şimdi Zaytung'un şöyle bir yapısı var. Bilmeyenler için anlatayım biraz. Bir temel editör kadrosu vardır. Full time işi Zaytung olan, başka hiçbir işle uğraşmayan. 5 kişilik bir kadro. Her gün işte haber toplantısı gibi biz Skype'da bir araya gelir, o günkü içeriği falan oluştururuz. Bir de Zaytung'a üye olup herkes kendi haberini yollayabilir. Onlar içinden de editörler tarafından seçilenler yayınlanır. Yani Zaytung'un hiçbir zaman 40 tane editörü olmamıştı. Şu an bu kadro 5 kişi benimle birlikte. Başlangıçta da 3 kişiydi. Yani mesela o kadro zaman içinde değişmiştir. Birileri girmiş çıkmıştır ama full time editör kadrosu yani sınırlı bir kadrodur. Sitede neyin yayınlanacağına da bu kadro karar verir. Uzun haberleri ve sitenin işte birazcık emek gerektiren bölümlerini o kadro hazırlar vesaire. Bir de işte dediğim gibi insanlar üye olup da yazabilirler. Çok kolaydır üye olmak. Aşağı yukarı bu şekilde 100.000'in üzerinde üyemiz var. Ve bunlardan şu an 1500 kadarı diyelim aktif bir şekilde bize haber yolluyorlar. Her gün böyle bir 500 kadar da bir içerik gelir bize. Onların içerisinde editörlerin bir işi de onlar içerisinden yayınlanabilecekleri seçmek. İşte editör işleri varsa onları yapmak falan filan. Bu işte hani tırnak için dediğim ayrılan arkadaşlar. Yani ben hani çoğun isimlerini bilmem. Hani belki nick olarak tanıyor olabilirim de hani bir şekilde hani bize kızmışlardır, şu olmuştur, bu olmuştur. Kendilerine bir site kurmuşlar. Okey yani. Yani başlangıçta da çok da ilkeli bir yer değildik zaten. Şimdi de öyle hani. O yüzden hangi ilkemizden vazgeçtiğimiz konusunda çok emin olamadım ben yani hani. Ama yani varsa bir ilkemiz vaz da geçeriz. Hani çok da o konuda ısrarcı olmam ben ya.
Bu sözü edilen bir Zaytung haberi miydi?
Nasıl? Yok.
Sorulan.
Yok değil, gerçek bir gelişme. Ben de bugün şeyde gördüm ya. Hatta arkadaşlarım mesaj attı, öyle gördüm ya. Zaytung bölünmüş dediler. Lan ne oldu, bizim editörler falan şey çıkardı diye, isyan mı çıkardı diye şey yaptım da böyle hani. Olan biten o aslında hani ki ilk defa da olmuyor böyle bir şey aslında. Hani daha önce de mesela ya şöyle bir şey olur. İnsanlar bize işte haber yollarlar, içerik yollarlar. Bazıları yayınlanır, bazıları da yollar, hiçbirisi yayınlanmaz. Yani belki iyidir de hakikaten biz adamın kıymetini bilemedik ya da hakikaten kötüydü falan. O başka tartışma konusu. Adam bize kızar, mesela gider başka bir site kurar, bilmem ne yapar. Ya da işte kendi içeriklerini Twitter'da kendi şeyinde yayınlamaya başlar falan filan. Hani bunlar olur. Yani biz de o noktada kimseye dur demeyiz ya da gel demeyiz. Çünkü o şeyin iyi bir şey olduğunu gördüm ben. Yazar sirkülasyonunun, içerik oluşturan kişilerin sirkülasyonunun editör ekibin içerisinde bile bu oluyorken dışarıdan içerik gönderen kullanıcılar açısından bunun olması daha da iyi bir şey. Çünkü o sitenin kendi kendini tekrar etmesi tehlikesinin biraz önüne geçen bir şey. İnsanlar ya kendileri sıkıldıkları için ya da belki bize küstükleri için ya da bambaşka sebeplerden bir süre sonra Zaytung'dan gidiyorlar. Hani 5 yıl içerisinde böyle hani yüzlerce iyi yazar geldi geçti Zaytung'dan. Bunu çok da büyük bir kayıp olarak görmedim. Çünkü Zaytung'da iyi bir şey yapıldığı sürece oraya iyi şeyler üreten insanlar zaten geleceklerdir. Hani ki geliyorlar da. İşte isimler değişiyor, yüzleri görmüyoruz gerçi de değişiyor ve her gelen kendisinden, kendi kültüründen, kendi birikiminden, kendi üslubundan yeni bir şeyler getiriyor siteye. Bu da bizim için bir zenginleşme aslında yani. Koyduk mu diye.
Buyurun hanımefendi.
My question is Mr. Mike. What is your ultimate goal with your works and your movies? I know it's fixing the world, but how do you? How are you trying to do this? Like, people will watch your movies and they will go, "Oh, this capitalist pigs are ruining the world," and then what do you expect them to do? What do you expect from or wish from society to do? How are we gonna? How we will gonna fix the world?
Well, we've found that people who watch our films immediately go and try to start revolutions just right away. They have an overwhelming urge. There's actually a secret message in the film, and it turns them into sleeper cell zombies. And then when they see a card with a queen on it, they run and assassinate the leader. No, it's not quite that simple, but our goals for projects, for each action that we do, is to work with organizations that have campaigns or groups of people that have campaigns to try to change specific things, usually about legislation, so specific government policies. So in our new movie, there's one action that we did where we worked with a group of climate change activists, and we targeted a thing called the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is the largest lobbying organization in the world, and they're working to undermine the public's role in government, and specifically they work for the oil industry for the most part. They work for other industries too, but they're a big player in helping the oil industry overrule any public involvement in governance about oil. And so we did an action against them that just raised their profile a little bit. At that moment, we impersonated them and held a press conference, and it got a lot of attention. And it was about their policy related to climate change because they were blocking the U.S. from engaging in climate change legislation. And so that's one example where we worked, but we worked with a campaign that was involving all kinds of different civil society groups and different activists and organizations trying to pressure the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to change, including their membership. Major corporations were dropping their members. They were leaving the organization. And 2 weeks after the action, they in fact changed their policy, and they got out of that business of blocking climate change legislation. So that's an example of a place where what we did happened at just the right time in a campaign that had a minor success. It's a minor success because it's just part of a big movement to try to address overconsumption and fossil fuels, the use of fossil fuels, trying to address climate change. But it's one way that we work with organizations that have campaigns. The other thing is that we just try to work as part of social movements. When we started doing what we do, it was kind of accidental that we got involved, but we were part of the anti-globalization movement that was opposing neoliberal economic policies and opposing the transfer of wealth from the public sector to, private hands to very rich people, basically. And so then when we were doing those actions, they sort of worked, loosely with that movement. And but our goals overall, yes, are to fix the world, but also to, we have fun doing it. That's the other. There are also goals of like being fulfilled, and feeling like we have like we're not doing nothing, but engaging with others who are doing the really hard and important heavy lifting that goes with building movements that create change.
And talking about climate change and the Chamber of Commerce thing, in the film it was very funny when the Chamber of Commerce retracted its case against you, and you make a press declaration that it's a pity that we would have gone into their vaults and their inside workings of it. And right at the end of it, you add, and they're offering a free lunch there, and
which they were. They literally were offering a free lunch that day. So yeah, they sued us. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce sued us, and then we had 4 years of a lawsuit before they eventually dropped the lawsuit just before we went to trial. But yeah, we went to hold a press conference on their steps, and we looked on their website and we saw that day they were actually offering a free lunch, for business people who wanted to explore, some kind of topic that I don't remember what they were doing, but these organizations often have things like free lunches, like a business or, for business people to come and listen to them speak about whatever they're trying to promote. And so I highly recommend looking at their websites, finding out when the free lunches are, and showing up with 100 of your best friends to go get the free lunch. It's good. I'm sure there's some kind of equivalent free lunch available here somewhere. Certainly in Ankara.
but the guy representative vehemently rejected it. No free lunch.
Yeah, he did say there was no such thing as a free lunch there, but we knew it was true. It was on the website. It was. Definitely.
So that was true. And let me add it, since we're talking about climate change, let me say this in Turkish, if you like. 28 Şubat'ta, yani cumartesi günü saat 13.30'da da Türkiye'de de biz uzunca bir süredir üzerinde çalıştığımız bir iklim değişikliğine karşı hareketin ilk adımını atmak üzere bir eski Yunan'dan, kadim Yunan demokrasisinden de öykünerek, biraz ona öykünerek Yüzler Meclisi diye adını verdiğimiz çok çeşitli kesimlerinden toplumun bir araya gelip bir manifesto yayınlayacağız ve hükümeti bundan sonra işte yenilenebilir enerji ve sıfır karbon emisyonuna zorlamak üzere uzun bir yolun başına çıkıyoruz. Yani Paris'te iklim konferansı var Aralık'ta ve ona gelirken böyle büyük bir kitle hareketi, global bir hareket yapmaya çalışacağız. Bu şeyde Cihangir'de cumartesi günü Tatavla sahnede, Akarsu Caddesi Taki yokuşunda, Firuza Meydanı'nda olacak. Gelirseniz çok mutlu oluruz. Gelip herkes ben de iklim için varım filan diyecek. Bir ufak konuşma olacak, o kadar yani. Herkes de çeşitli kesimlerden niye bu hareketi başlatmakta öncü olduğunu bir kelimeyle söyleyecek. Yani 20 kadar kişi, öyle bir şey. Gelirseniz çok mutlu oluruz. Evet. Buyurun.
Previous week Andy told you have three children and how your wife look like this fixing the world, and is she say, Mike, that's enough, we have a family. What you think, what your wife was think about this issue?
I should call her now and find out. Maybe she should say herself. I mean, she like me has children. She actually had to give birth to them, so in a lot of ways, it's much her more. Her. I think she feels like she wants them to have a livable future as well. So she excuses my absence very graciously. So and she's also an activist who is fighting for her own and their future. So it is hard though to balance these things. That's this new movie that we have is about this kind of how you keep going even though you're like old and fat and decrepit and pathetic, like how you keep mobilizing and motivating, and seeing that despite even in hopeless moments, that there is something, that there's the possibility of a much better future. So yeah, so it's a good question for me. I hope I answered it. But later, afterward, we can call her and I'll put her on the phone with you and you can ask her. She'll probably be a little more honest than me.
Buyurun. Şu hanımefendi oradan.
Öncelikle merhaba. Benim iki katılımcıya da ortak bir sorum olacaktı. The Yes Men'de birazcık bahsedilmişti ama videoda yine de soracağım. Hiç hukuki engellerle karşılaşıyor musunuz? Özellikle Zaytung'a da soruyorum bunu. Çünkü günümüzde bir tweet için bile insanlar hesap vermek zorunda kalıyor. Bu anlamda sizin yaptığınız işin biraz çizmeyi aştığı düşünülebilir bazı kesimlerce. Bunu merak ediyorum. Teşekkür ederim.
Ya bugüne kadar hiç bir davayla karşılaşmadık. Birkaç kere içerik kaldırma talebi geldi. Onların da bir tanesini değerlendirdik. Geri kalanını sallamadık diyelim. Yani dava etsinler de mahkemeye gitsin diye bekledik ama dava da etmediler. O iş yani bizim için şey olmadı. Hukuki bir engel önemli bir şey, bir set olarak önümüze çıkmadı hiç bugüne kadar. Bizim de şaşırdığımız bir şekilde. Ama bir yandan da şeyde biz daha dikkatli ve ihtiyatlı davranıyoruz. Hani nerede yaşadığımızın bilinciyle diyelim. Şimdi ekipteki editör arkadaşlardan 2 tanesi avukat zaten meslek olarak da. O yüzden hani bir şey olacağı zaman yani abi şu ifade dava edilebilir falan diyorlar. Onu başka bir şeyle değiştiriyoruz falan mesela biz. Öyle orada biraz şey böyle ne diyeyim kitabını uydurma durumumuz çok oluyor. O yüzden de hani biraz da belki onun avantajını kullanıyor. Belki bilmiyorum içeride bizi kollayan birileri de olabilir. Tam ondan da emin değilim ama varsa sağ olsun. Olmadı. Bundan sonra da olmaz inşallah diye umuyorum yani.
Ya, oradan vardı galiba.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I guess in our case, we've been sued, but we wanted to be sued. So that's different.
We also do. But,
yeah, exactly. I mean, in that case, it was, if we had gone to trial with the Chamber of Commerce, every day we would have been able to talk about what was wrong with the Chamber of Commerce, and the news would have reported it. There's a very famous case that became known as McLibel in the UK, where McDonald's sued 2 activists who were handing out pamphlets in front of a McDonald's restaurant, and their pamphlets said that their hamburgers were bad for people's health and were destroying the rainforests. 2 things that are true. I mean, it's not great to eat McDonald's hamburgers every day. You can watch Super Size Me to see what happens to Morgan Spurlock when he does it. But they were only reaching a couple hundred people a day handing out their pamphlets. But once they'd been sued by McDonald's and they didn't give in, they ended up, spending 5 years in court. And every day they could talk to the press about how bad McDonald's hamburgers were for people in the environment. And during that time, the public in England and Scotland and Ireland got so angry with McDonald's because they kept suing these pathetic activists, these tiny little people, that they started to not go to McDonald's anymore. And that during those years, McDonald's started to close restaurant after restaurant in the UK. And eventually it became such a nightmare for them, a public relations nightmare, that they had to rethink their entire policy and their strategy of how they dealt with activists in general. And so I think we also benefit from that when we're operating in a place like the US or the UK. If we're criticizing a corporation that has a brand to protect, or to some degree if we're criticizing a government that is beholden to public opinion, then we're inoculated against being sued. Like, we could probably be much more illegal than we are. I mean, most of what we do is just free speech, but we could push it quite far. Whereas, I mean, here it's a bit different, right? It's maybe, maybe the law doesn't matter as much, or maybe, but I think that there's still room, there's always room for figuring out how to criticize. And it's interesting, we've had a couple of cases where a television company wanted to do a show with us, right? Like Comedy Central, for example. Comedy Central, we had a show we were proposing for a little while with them, and it got through to the final stages, and they were very excited. All the people who were making the programming were interested in it. But then when it went to their business office, they said, well, we can't do this show because you're criticizing, you're naming corporations that are our sponsors that advertise with us. And we thought, well, how is that? Is that possible? Because Jon Stewart, The Daily Show, is on Comedy Central, so how do they do it? And we looked, and sure enough, they actually don't mention corporations by name unless they're already in the news. Like during the BP oil spill, they could make jokes about BP. But if it wasn't a massive news item, they weren't making fun of the oil industry. Well, they were making fun of the oil industry, but not BP or not Exxon. And so, but even in those conditions, they made a very funny show, that worked very well, and you usually knew who they were talking about. So I think my point is that it seems like there's always a way to make these criticisms, even if it's limited in some way, even if you end up having to change because of the law, you know, to slightly alter what you're going to do. And sometimes it makes you more creative and more effective.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's sometimes, actually mostly, it makes us more, it drives us to be more creative and more, find a more enthusiastic way to say what to say. And it's much better than saying it directly. So it creates a better content for us in our case.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
And by the way, talking about gaining strength, these kind of activist movements, what do you think about the latest situation in fighting against global climate change?
Well, I mean, right now it seems like there is a wave, a global wave of activism that's building in the lead up to Paris 2015. There's the next round of UN negotiations, and I think there's been so many recent disasters, you know, weather-wise, that people are beginning to see the need to act on this. So I mean, I feel quite optimistic about that. I mean, it's easy to be pessimistic because there have been so many rounds of negotiations with so much failure. But one of the things to always look back on is what has happened in past social movements where it seemed like failure was the status quo, or it seemed like failure was happening all the time. And, you know, even for big, all of the big movements were failures until they succeeded. You know, and when they succeed, it can be very quick. Like there might be decades of failure and then 6 months in which there's a success, it becomes a success. But for those decades, if you talk to people who were involved in those struggles, they will often say, yeah, it felt like we were losing the whole time. And then suddenly we're in that place where we'd hit that tipping point, or some external event would happen that would make it possible to push through and whatever, abolish slavery in a country, or give the women the right to vote, or, you know, those kinds of those movements that would succeed very quickly after failing for a long time. So that's, I mean, I think these, yeah, we can think about all this failure as a pathway, a road to success.
The question is, how much time do we have left?
Well, we may not have any time left. It may have passed, but that doesn't provide an excuse to not try.
Of course. Yeah, sure.
I want to ask a simple question to you, Mike. At your films, we see the successful projects that you worked on, but I think you work on, at the same time, a couple of projects, and which you show us the ones you succeeded in. So the question is, for example, now, how many different projects you're working on now?
At any given time, we maybe, I mean, it depends. Sometimes there's none, and sometimes there's 10. But right now we have a thing called the Action Switchboard, which is at www.actionswitchboard.net, which is a platform that is there to encourage anyone to participate in their own actions. So those aren't, it's not us, but we've created this system for people to be able to meet each other and work together, collaborate on creative activist actions, or even non-creative direct action projects. So that platform is up and running, and in theory it could support, you know, hundreds of projects instead of just a few. But about 5 years ago we started working to train other people to try to do actions themselves, because so many people were writing to us and saying, won't you do something about my issue? And we'd say, well, you have a great issue, and but there's only a couple of us, and maybe you can do something about it. And so then we would start to work with them, and in a sense, the idea was to train and network. But the thing is, we're just one little group, and then there's a whole bunch of other groups around that are doing all kinds of similar projects and very different ones. But there's some great new resources available. There's a book called Beautiful Trouble that is being released in Turkish soon. Is anybody here from the publishing house? Okay. And that book, I think, has a lot of resources, a lot of different groups around the world that are working in similar ways. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question.
And Paul Hawken says that in his Blessed Unrest, says this is the biggest movement ever in the history of humanity. And it's getting stronger and stronger. Maybe he's right, I don't know. He calls it the movement with no name, I believe.
The movement with no name, okay.
Yeah. Ne kadar süremiz olduğunu ne kadar?
10 dakika.
Bitirdik yani 5 dakika var. Kısaca soru alalım.
Well, I'd like to ask both of you a very general question. Why humor in the first place? How do you see humor?
Well, for us, we like to laugh, and also it's it's easier than grief for us. It's also people like to spread humor. You know, we like to. It's sticky. It's you want to share it. You know, you tell somebody, you can't just keep a joke to yourself and keep laughing about it. It doesn't work that way. You have to tell somebody else the joke. And so this is the principle that we work on, and we think that that it becomes infectious that way, and it's a way to try to spread a virus of resistance.
Bir soru daha alabiliriz.
Tamam yani. Tamam.
Var mı başka soru? Bir soru daha vaktimiz kaldı galiba. Şey yaparsanız. İki soru daha.
Merhaba. Zaytung'un birazcık şeyle ilgili, gelişimiyle ilgili, önceki hali, şimdiki haliyle ilgili bir şey sormak istiyorum. Önceden beri takip ediyorum. Hani kötü bir şey olarak söylemiyorum ama şu an daha politik olarak muhalif mizaha biraz angaja olmuş durumda. Hani daha önce daha sert mizah ve daha işte bu politically correct sınırlarını biraz daha zorlayan bir mizah vardı. Acaba popülerleşmeyle birlikte bir kayıp korkusu oluyor mu ve hani artık eskiden çünkü pek yoktu. Hani direkt örnek vermek şey değil ama daha handikaplarla ilgili bile işte mizah yapılıyordu. Şimdi bu popülerliği kaybetme kaygısı geliyor mu ya da artık bir otosansür oluyor mu içinizde? Hani bunu sormak istiyorum. Acaba değişti mi bir şeyler sizin için?
Ya açıkçası o dediğiniz şey doğru. Doğru bir gözlem yani. Ama bu bizden ziyade ya birazcık şeyle ilgili. Ya ülkenin gündemiyle alakalı bir şey. Yani evet ilk çıktığımızda daha böyle hani yine evet siyaset vardı konularımız arasında, işlediğimiz konular arasında ama daha hani işte politically incorrect dediğimiz mizah anlayışından da örnekler sergiliyorduk. Daha şey gündelik hayatla ilgili şeylerdi ama özellikle son 2 yılda ülkenin ve bireylerin de bizim de giderek daha politik insanlar olmamızdan kaynaklanan bir nedenle Zaytung'da biraz daha politikleşen bir yer oldu. Hani bu şeyden kaçınmaktan ziyade hani bu işte popüler olduk da artık biraz daha işte insanları daha az kızdıralım kaygısından ziyade aslında bizim kişisel olarak gündelik o gündemimizin de daha ziyade politikaya bulanmasından kaynaklanıyor. Bundan aslında rahatsızız da yani. Bunun dışına da biraz çıkmak istiyoruz. Mümkün olduğunda hani gündem izin verdiğinde hemen politikanın dışında bir şeyler yapıyoruz vesaire gündelik hayatın. Ama eskisi kadar da izin vermiyor açıkçası. Yani yapsanız da gümbürtüye gidiyor. O gün kimsenin yani gündemde çok böyle önemli herkesin konuştuğu bir şeyler varken sizin manşette apayrı bir konuya girmeniz okey bir yandan güzel hani çok da sallamıyorum anlamına geliyor ama o çok da fazla bir anlam bulmuyor açıkçası. Yani boşa yapmış gibi bir şey olacaksınız oluyor. O yüzden birazcık ülke değiştiği için aslında Zaytung'da biraz o şekilde o yönde değişti yani.
Evet, son sorumuzu alıyoruz lütfen.
Hello. I wanted to ask, has it become more difficult to impose people in power because facts are easier to check, or on the other hand, has it become more easy to get a lot of buzz and a lot of spread with some actions because journalism has become more lazy and has to be more faster?
I think it's become different. It's different because we used to rely on journalists to print our stories, to work with us on stories. You know, we would write press releases and work with the traditions of the public relations industry, where you create a story, you write it yourself, you create your own media, you give it to journalists, and then journalists turn it into something and print it in the mainstream newspaper. That's a bit harder to do now because there's less journalists, there's less papers in the newspaper, less pages in the newspaper. Sometimes it works for the online editions, but it's harder to compete for those pages in the print editions. At least in the US, it's much harder. And so we rely more on social media. And for that, it just requires a sort of different way of working. I don't think it's any easier or any harder. It's a little bit different, and it's a little less predictable, I think. I think the social media, it's harder to know when you're going to get pickup. When it's going to become more of a viral thing and people are going to share it. And I think that's in part because with the old school journalism, you would know certain journalists who you know would like to cover your stories anyway. And so you could kind of rely on them, and they had a little bit more autonomy, and a little bit, typically, if they wrote something, you knew that they could get it in the pages at some point. Whereas now it's sort of, you're relying on these more, more abstract things. Like if there's something else that happens that day that gets in the way, it's not just news, but like some weird, if there's a very cute cat photo that day that gets the cute news story, then your cute action might not compete, so if everybody's doing the Harlem Shake that day, then they're not going to be spreading your story. So it's less predictable, but it's also more interesting. It's more interesting in a way because you're dealing with these networks of individuals sharing it with each other, which is a more direct connection, in a sense, to the story than reading it in the mainstream paper. So yeah, it's just different. I'm a bit old though. I preferred the old way. It was more authoritarian. Less, I like that better.
Evet, bitiriyoruz herhalde. Mike Bonanno ve Hakan Bilginer. Ben Deniz Ömer Madra. Çok teşekkür ediyorum alma materime de bana bu fırsatı da vermiş olduğu için. Ve bitirdik.
Can I say one thing? Because I haven't had the opportunity to thank anyone yet for anything here, and I just wanted to say that on behalf of me and Andy, who has left in the beginning of the week, it's been an amazing experience here, and we really, I think, feel privileged to have been able to get a little bit closer to understanding what's happening here, and to be able to see more of what's been happening in the struggle for autonomy and expression and really the future of this place. And so we want to thank the Boğaziçi Chronicles, Teşekkür to everybody. And yeah, it's just been, so thank you.